Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Pharmacy Seeds Network, Sunday night All Things Natural Net live stream. So, if you don't know, the Sunday night All Things Natural Net is an amateur radio net provided by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club, located in Ulster County, New York, and this net is dedicated to farming, gardening, ecology, that kind of stuff. People always ask about the radio. It is amateur radio, it's not a CB, so it's kind of similar, but a little more capable. Anyway, that's that. I guess we'll go ahead and get the net started. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. The Sunday Night All Things Natural Net is an amateur radio net provided by the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club to the users of the repeater of the OMARC 805. Let's see. I guess we'll just take check-ins. Kind of tired tonight. KD2IIN Net Control looking for check-ins.
RWS, Rob, good evening.
Quiet net tonight. The net recognizes W2RWS. Hello, Rob. And let's just see if there's anyone else out there, and then we'll go get started. Any further check-ins, please call now. No further check-ins. How are things since I last talked to you, Rob? KD2I in here.
Pretty good. Looks like we got some more rain on the way. I saw something I wanted to share with you called the Empress of Dirt, and she has a kitchen propagation handbook. After about 3 months of growing avocados successfully, I found this website. I have now not downloaded her ebook, but would like to. And as I said, I was growing avocados, tomatoes, oranges, mangoes, quite a few things. Anything with a seed in it, I've had great success. It seems cantaloupe is pretty easy to sprout.
Oh yeah, that's right. For those who don't know, we were talking earlier about this, and Rob saves seeds from the store and starts them, and he's had some good success with all sorts of interesting stuff, including mangoes and avocados and all. Interesting, I was not familiar with that, but I know there are quite a few people who do that, and I know there are people who propagate from cuttings from vegetables from the store as well. A YouTube friend of mine down in Florida actually had some pretty good success with doing that with pineapples, so that's interesting. KD2I, and I'll put it back to you.
Well, this is crazy. I found an apple that's called the Honeycrisp that is unbelievable, so tasty, and the texture is wonderful. And my wife got me a dehydrator. So I've been dehydrating apples, and I said, you know what, I'll save the seeds. Now I've got a whole bunch of them. I mean, I've got a small bottle of apple seeds, and I thought I would grow a Honeycrisp. So I sprouted probably about a dozen seeds, and I've got about 5 or 6 inch plants, but then somebody told me, no, that's not the way the apples grow. You have to get a cutting from the Honeycrisp tree to draft on to these apples, because these are generic. There was a word for it, and I forgot what it was. Pippin. It was a pippin that I grew.
Yep, yeah. For those who don't know, apples don't breed true, so you won't, you could take 2 apple trees that are of the same type and cross the pollination from those, and the resultant seed will not necessarily produce that same apple tree. In fact, the odds are it probably will not. Grafting and cuttings is an excellent way to propagate that sort of stuff. And taking cuttings like that is called a scion. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
So I have 2 books I have not cracked open, but will find the time to open them on propagation. I forgot the art and cutting of propagation. I don't know, something really incredible. And one of the things I discovered was I needed and got recently at the Agway in Red Hook growth hormone that you can dip the seeds in. Now my jade plant fell off the shelf, and I'm trying to regrow that. But it seems I may have too high a concentration of that stuff. I dipped it right into the powder.
Okay. Okay, you're probably talking about a rooting hormone. Yeah, those rooting hormones are super, super, super powerful hormones. And by the way, I hope you know to wash your hands really well after handling that stuff. That can really mess you up and make you really sick. But yeah, that can be handy with stuff. Interesting to note, you can actually make your own rooting hormone by soaking chopped up willow tree bark, because that has a similar effect.
No wonder my fingers were 3 inches longer. I'm just kidding. The willow tree, now that's interesting. I would like to get cuttings of willow trees because my wife took a incredible workshop on basket making and wove something that I thought was just incredible for somebody that just took a class. So we could actually start our own willow cuttings, I believe, root them and grow them, and then harvest I think the stalks that come up during the winter, or I guess the early spring, to make baskets.
Yep. And if you're into all that sort of thing, there's a guy named Arthur Haynes. He's a plant taxonomist, and he's got a couple of books. He's got actually, I think he might have 3 or 4 out now. I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but it's all like wild foraging, basket making, all that kind of stuff. And he goes specifically into trees of the Northeast, and what those materials are good for, whether it's for making fire, or for food, or for medicine, or for basket weaving, that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think of the name of the book, but it's not hitting me.
CJ, give me the name of the author. Arthur, what's the last name?
Arthur Haynes, Hanes, and he's also on YouTube, and man, he's excellent. He probably could spend hours just watching his videos. He's just awesome.
There are two tools I'm fabricating. One is a pipe, maybe a half-inch pipe out of copper, maybe a little bit smaller, cut on a diagonal so you can work it into the basket to have a path to actually put the reed in. And another is a big poker stick that goes to a point that you can make a hole with. Those are 2 tools that my wife needed, and I thought I would try and spin on a lathe or manufacture. I thought that would be nifty.
Gotcha. Very cool. Sounds like you're both into some interesting stuff. Let's just take a pause here for a minute and see if there's any further check-ins, and we'll carry on. This is KD2IIN Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now.
KD2LD, Bob's here. Kilo Delta 2, Charlie Victor Whiskey.
Alright, the net recognizes K2LD, Bob, and KD2CVW, Don. We'll start with Bob. How are you tonight, Bob?
Doing just fine. Got to work a half day today instead of my usual. So got home and was able to do a few odds and ends. And on a computer now and paying some bills and doing homework type stuff that got to catch up on. And heard you guys on. And interesting what you said about making a rooting hormone from willow tree bark. That's I know about willow tree bark because that's a salicylate. It used to be an old natural painkiller. I never heard about rooting from there.
Yep. Can be used for a natural rooting hormone, and also that same salicylic acid can also be used as an induced systemic response to stimulate immune response from plants.
Completely interesting. That's good to know. One of your videos, I had a question on. The one where you got corn and you have all sorts of stuff growing in between it. I think it's buckwheat. I never knew you could do something like that. Like, wouldn't there be in competition for the water and the minerals and everything else if your main crop is corn?
No, actually, that leaf cover actually protects the soil and protects the moisture, and it actually amplifies how much carbon you're sequestering into the soil, and so that accelerates the soil biology, and that actually makes more mineral and nutrition available to your main crop. That said, it has to be balanced so that you're not, so that your cover crop isn't competing with your corn crop. So, like the buckwheat, for example, is very fast germinating and emerging, and very fast growing broadleaf. So I'll seed corn, and then when the corn comes up, I'll go back and seed the buckwheat and drill it in. Because if I seed them at the same time, the buckwheat will outcompete the corn. So there is a balance there to maintain. But yeah, it's an excellent, excellent tool, and I'm going to be trying the rye this year. I'm really looking forward to having something covering the soils, growing green, you know, throughout the season, with the exception of obviously the colder, frozen part of the winter.
Great stuff. Always learning a ton from you. No two ways about that. And as far as the cutting goes, I made a ton of plants this spring from what you told me about cutting the sweet potatoes, and I did the same thing with basil, and I did the same thing with tomatoes, and they're all growing, so it's good.
Awesome, awesome. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah, it sounds like you're having a good growing season up there this year. I'm really glad to hear that. I know you had a struggle the last couple of years between weather and all sorts of other issues.
Well, the one thing that helped this year that I didn't have to do the past years is I didn't go away. So I was able to water throughout the hot summer and keep an eye on things, and things went very, very well. Anyway, I don't want to hog it up. You better pass it on down.
And this is KD2II Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. Yeah, I hear you, that going away thing. When my kids would come to visit when they were younger, and I'd go away for a couple of weeks, man, I'd come back and you're just so far behind and everything. It's been neglected and not watered. And, yeah. All right, let's roll on down to KD2 CBW. Don, how are you tonight?
Alright, CJ, hello to all. I just want to let you know I got my dirt the other day from my garden. It worked out pretty well. Traded a couple thousand rounds of ammo for it, and it's got it all filled in and ready to go for next spring.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I'm sure that'll pay off nice for you next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be huge. Just going to get in some canning, maybe some freeze drying and whatnot. So, but anyway, I wanted to put that out there, and I'll be on the side listening. Kilo Delta 2, Charlie Victor Whiskey.
All right, sounds good, Don. Glad you're making good progress over there. And with that, we're going to go ahead and do another opportunity for check-ins. This is KD2II Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. If there are any further check-ins, please call now. Alright, doesn't look like any further check-ins. We're going to roll back to the top of the list. W2RWS.
Two things. I haven't looked this up yet. Maybe you can tell me what I need to do here. Pits. Plums and peaches. I've been saving them. I got a whole pile of them. They're hard as a rock. Do I need to whack them with a hammer, open them, or soak them? Exactly how would I sprout pits? And the other thing I wanted to mention is I've got several yucca plants that are on the property. I understand they're invasive, I guess, and they propagate with these big roots. I took a lot of them out. I threw them in the trash, and I went back there on my property and noticed that I got some sprouts. So I've decided I'm going to try and raise them on a different area where I think they would look really nice as a landscape item. So I thought I'd mention that.
All right, I can't say I'm entirely too familiar with sprouting pits, but I know what I've seen done is people put them in a bucket of sand, damp sand, and they put that bucket, you know, they dig a hole in the ground that fits the bucket size, and they set that in, and then that way the the pits get that exposure to moisture and also the cold that they need for stratification, and that they'll emerge in the spring, and then they plant them out from there. I think some people do split them open too, but I'm not all too familiar with that. I haven't dug too deep into that topic. And I can't remember the name of the plant you were just talking about, but that plant, also the root of that is used for making tapioca also, so it does have a food value as well.
So the pits have to overwinter and freeze, is that correct?
That is my understanding, yeah, they need to be stratified.
And I whacked one open or two with a pair of pliers and tried to wet paper towel it to get it to start, and it was a miserable failure. It actually started to rot, so that didn't work. I read with the blueberries that they need to freeze for 90 days before you remove the seeds and actually plant them. So I'm going to try that over the freezer.
Yep. Yeah, that freezing is called stratification. They have to go through a dormancy period where it's cold. Yeah, you might try that with the pits and see. I almost think you probably want to soak them first and then put them in the freezer. You really want to try and mimic, what they would experience in nature.
Roger that. Also, my avocado plants, obviously I got to grow them indoors. I can't keep them outdoors in the winter, so that's going to be a greenhouse thing. That was kind of for fun. I don't know how. I heard it took like 8 years to finally fruit.
Yeah, that's what I've read as well, and to date, I think mine is 4 years old now, and it's a giant tree, and I have not seen any flowers or fruit on it yet. They also have a strange flowering fruiting cycle that kind of varies from year to year. But I know years back when I was doing a landscaping job with somebody, one of the people we were doing a job for had a small avocado tree out on her patio, and I know it had a little tiny avocado on it, so I'm hoping at some point I'll actually get one on mine.
That's cool. Well, I'll see if I can make it that long with these pups. I did have, a lychee nut. I actually sprouted lychee trees. I've had them now indoors for 1 year, but I'm losing leaves. They start to turn brown, and I don't know what's happening. Is that overwater, or is that just the way they grow?
I gotta be perfectly honest, I have no idea what a lychee tree even is, so I couldn't tell you a darn thing about it.
Well, I got them in Chinatown. Lychee nuts. They're like how do I say? They're like a chestnut, only they're wet, and you peel them, and then eat the flesh, and you wind up with this big nut about the size of the tip of your pinky, basically, but as long as, say, the first joint. And I actually sprouted them. I thought that was kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah. I just pulled them up on Wikipedia here. I've never heard of them before. Not familiar with them. But I don't know what to tell you on that. But it's probably not enough light, or it might be too dry an environment. I see they are sort of a tropical tree. So again, study and mimic nature there.
So I had them in a south-facing window. What would you recommend for artificial light during the winter that I can extend the growing season?
Probably the best light source that you could do that's not too expensive on power is something like a T5 compact fluorescent. You could just put that on a timer. But I honestly don't know. Really should look into what their natural life cycle is, and try to mimic that.
Is there an LED version of a grow light, or is that just hype?
There is, but unless you spend a pretty significant amount of money, their actual value as far as light that provides enough energy for mitosis, which is cell division, which is what photosynthesis is based on, unless you spend a lot of money, you're probably not going to be too happy with them. So either plan to add other plants in there and buy a high-end light, and you're probably looking somewhere between $600 and $1,000, or go with something like a T5.
Yeah, sounds like the T5 is in order. What should I do with that growth hormone? Did I use too much? 80% of my jade plant cuttings leaves did not sprout or root. Do I need to dilute that in water, or what do I do?
Yeah, you could dilute that in water. If you're propagating jade plants, though, you shouldn't be any need for rooting hormone. Those things will sprout and just sitting on top of soil half the time just from a leaf.
Do I let the leaf that dropped off heal first?
I'm not sure on that, but probably doesn't matter.
And then I might have waited too long because some of them did not root and I couldn't figure it out. That's why I thought I needed that growth hormone, but perhaps I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't think you do on a jade plant. They're pretty fast propagating. The thing you might want to do is just keep. Hang on. You might want to just monitor moisture and make sure it stays a little bit moisture to help it pop out a root. KD2 and control for the Sunday night, all things natural.
Yeah, I've noticed that things dry out extremely quickly, and it's a good thing I'm here 24/7. Now I can water it once every 2 days versus once a week when I was down in the city.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, once a week is way too long this time of year. So yeah, it's nice to be able to stay on top of things and all. This time of year, I have a hard time staying on top of potted plants and greenhouse and in-ground crops. Let's see. Let's just do a pause here and see if there's any further check-ins. This is KD2 and control for the Sunday night All Things Natural Net. If any further check-ins, please call now. All right, no further check-ins recognized at this time. We'll roll on down to Bob, K2LD.
Well, I gotta say, this is a fascinating conversation. I have never heard of such a mixture of plants in somebody's house. I'm truly impressed. Everything from lychee nuts to pits to just too many things. I can't even imagine what that would be like to try and with the different potential growing seasons and inside, outside. It's gotta be interesting. That's for sure. Do you ever get any edible fruit out of all this menagerie of plants that you're making? Just out of curiosity, and it's really all my thought has been a moment, and you can pass it right on there.
All right, very good. This is KD2 and control for the Sunday night All Things Natural Net, and I'll just put that question back to Rob. You can go ahead and answer direct.
Not yet. This is a COVID-19 experiment. Since I was here, and I'm the head chef in the household of two, my wife and I decided not to waste any food, and I looked at all these seeds and said, gee, how about that? I've got all these little pots. I might as well start potting them. It started out in the fall. I used to park my pickup truck in Mount Kisco and then take Metro North up, pick up the truck, and come up here weekends. And I noticed they had beautiful plantings all over the place, beautiful flowers, and they all went to seed. So I grabbed a couple of Starbucks bags, and I was shaking the seeds left and right. And I thought, hey, this would be a lot of fun. And so I started growing that, and then I realized in the kitchen, hey, wait a minute, I can do the same thing. So I just started about, and we'll see what happens. It's just a sport. The lychee nuts I got from Chinatown 2 years ago, they're doing well, but no, they're too small, and I'm sure it takes years to do. But it's just for fun.
Fascinating story, it really is. Keep it going.
Yeah, I'm going to second that sentiment. I'm also impressed. I rarely find someone who has more exotic plants than I do, or someone who has plants that I don't even know the name of. So I'm impressed, and that's awesome, and I'd be glad to see how things progress for you with that. With that, let's roll on down to Don, KD2 CEW.
Thanks, CJ. Nothing really to add. Let the other guys pick it up, then we'll be good. Kilo Delta 2, Charlie Victor Whiskey.
Alright, very good. Sounds good. We'll roll it back up to W2, RWS.
So, I was minding my own business in a gardening store in Rhinebeck. The Phantom Gardener. Now, this is a big secret, so you've got to keep this really, I should be talking really softly. I see this plant. It's a succulent. It's called the Mother of a Million Plants. And it's got these huge leaves, maybe 6 inches long, with thousands of little babies on the edges of all the leaves. And it was $27, and my wife didn't like it, and I wasn't sure, but I was fascinated with it. And I looked. I picked it up and set it down. A couple of those little seedling things, those little sproutlings, fell off the leaf. So I swept up about 11 of them and stuck them in my pocket. They were that small. I've got them growing. They're probably about 2 inches high and about 2 inches wide. It's called the Mother of a Million Plants, I think.
Very interesting. I've seen those once or twice before. Those are a cool plant, and yeah, Phantom Gardener has some awesome collection of plants down there, and nice score on the free propagation.
Just don't tell anybody. It fell off. Nobody, it's laying on the counter, and I said, yeah, what the hell? Let's see what happens. I just put it in dirt and constantly watered it, basically. Well, not dirt. Now, I want to talk to you about that. What kind of soil? I mix 50% peat moss and 50% dirt, thinking that might be the best thing because it looks good. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, the best soil I would recommend if you're going to buy something would be Coast of Maine potting soil, and actually they have that at Phantom Gardener. That's what I use. Other than that, you can make your own soils, but there's an awful lot to soil science, and it's everything from minerals and trace minerals to biology, and then all the constituents and components. So it can be pretty complex. That peat isn't a horrible medium overall, but certainly there are better things. That, again, I would say Coast of Maine potting soil is my favorite. I've tried a lot of other potting soils with mixed and varying results, but that one always stands out as solid.
Say that slow or spell it. What is it called? Coast of who?
Coast of Maine, as in the state of Maine. Coast of Maine.
Roger. Okay, I'll look for that. That's awesome. I don't want to monkey around with it and fail just because of the soil. After I've got this much effort to pull this off for various things.
Exactly, and yeah, it all comes back to the soil. So fantastic. All right, let's roll on down to Bob, K2LD.
Running on the topic of soil, let's just continue that thread for a little tiny bit. You said I might be a little low on the calcium side. Other than the exotic stuff that you buy in, farmer quantity bulk, is there something that small scale would be available, like an Adams or someplace like that, to enrich the calcium?
Yeah, I think probably the best calcium amount you could put on there is the calcium sulfate or gypsum, and you can get that at, I know you can get it at Agway. I'm sure you can get it over at Adams or any of the other gardening centers. So it's gypsum or calcium sulfate.
And I'm assuming that's going to change the pH a little bit too?
Yes and no. It'll interact with the soil for sure. A big part of why that's a good form of calcium is because of the sulfur that's in there. Sulfur is a big part of all those other critical processes, especially like DNA replication, amino acid production, and that sort of stuff. So that'll help catalyze the sulfur in amongst those other constituents in the biochemical sequence of nutrition.
Okay, because even though it's still midsummer for most people, I'm getting toward the end of my growing season up here as far as what I put in so far. So at some point when I start pulling plants up, I start preparing for the following year by mixing in stuff into the soil like back guano and other things that I can give it time to completely absorb into the soil. And if gypsum is the way of going, I'll put some of that in and let it sit around for the winter and see what happens.
Yeah, let me throw you another tip on the gypsum. Gypsum usually takes between 30 and 45 days to be available in the soil, and so that's probably something you're going to want to amend several times throughout the growing season, and not necessarily in the fall when that availability won't benefit any plants.
Okay, LD right there. Then gypsum is available in like a fine powder that just gets mixed in?
Yeah, you can get it in a powder or in pellet form, and you can just spread it on the surface of the soil, and the rains and stuff will drive it in.
Alright, very good. I know what to look for. Thank you very much. And pass it over up.
Alright, you're very welcome. Back up to Rob.
It's in sheetrock, that's gypsum. Or does it work that way?
I'm sorry, we doubled. I caught something about sheetrock. Yes, sheetrock is gypsum, but you would have to burn sheetrock down at very high temperatures to get rid of all the other components there.
Roger that. Hey, this might be the perfect form to ask a question. So, my wife and I have been here for 2 years in this house, and 2 and a couple months. And the first time we noticed this god-awful smell. I thought for sure it was like a circus came to town. It smelled like elephants. It smelled like, and my wife said, it's a bear. It's a bear outside. My God, get in the house. It stinks. And we couldn't figure it out until I asked the neighbor, and he smelled the same thing and said, it's the farmer next door. They're growing corn. And I don't know what they used. It must have been a manure of some sort. Can you enlighten me?
Yeah, they probably put some kind of manure down. If they're growing corn, they might have spread it on top of the soil, or they might have done some sort of injection. If it's a god-awful smell and it doesn't have any kind of sweetness to it, it's probably pig manure. That has a pretty rancid smell to it. Although poultry manure can be pretty offensive too. If it's kind of a sweeter smell to it, that's probably a cow manure.
You got me. I'll have to take a whiff the next time. There's something called olfactory fatigue. I guess after you smell something for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, you don't smell it anymore, i.e. skunk, I guess. So I guess they harvest this stuff and spray it onto the surface once a growing season. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, there's various application methods, but that's typically what's done. Yeah, they just spread it on top, and depending whether they're no-tilling it, they might leave it on, or if they're disking or tilling, then they might disc it in as well. But yep, that's pretty much how it goes.
But that was quite the surprise. I had no clue. But it's a good thing we figured it out.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. One of the places I lived was close enough that once in a while, when the wind shifted and they put out some pig manure, boy, it just about knock you over.
Oh, I also wanted to mention, to Bob's point, I was looking at a barn when we were first looking at real estate. I came across this gorgeous 1860 landmarked barn in Hyde Park for sale. And my fantasy was, okay, I'll build a house out of it. I'll redo it. Of course, no one knows what the foundation is like, and I can't tell a building department, well, it doesn't have any footings. So it would, major expense. But as I was looking at the barn and going upstairs, the guy says, hey, watch your step there. Don't step in that bat guano. I said, what? And he says, well, you could get, I think he said $16 a pound for that stuff.
Oh yeah, bat guano, depending on what it is, goes for pretty good money. I bet Bob could tell you about that. Sounds like he's bought some of it. It is an excellent nutrient source for sure, and I know of a barn in Rhinebeck actually that has quite a bit of bat guano accumulate from time to time. Let's see, this is KD2IIN, control for the Sunday night All Things Natural Net. Just do a real quick opportunity for check-ins here. If there's any further check-ins, please call now.
Here's K2BHM, nothing to add, but just here reading the mail.
Alright, it recognizes Jim, K2BHM. Looks like no further check-ins, so we'll just push over to Jim here quick. K2BHM, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm carrying on some other things and so forth, and just reading the mail, and nothing to add. Just enjoying the conversation as fill in as I'm doing some other things.
All right, very good, very good. Well, thanks for joining us. I guess we'll roll back to the top list. W2RWS.
I don't know how much of a study I need to make of this, but we were talking earlier, CJ and I, about a passive greenhouse, which would be just south-facing windows, where in the back, on the north side, where the winter sun can get to it, there would be a thermal mass to absorb heat that can be released slowly at night, and you can get a 24-hour cycle out of this naturally. So the point I was questioning was, I've seen all sorts of formulas for the amount of poundage of rock versus the square footage of the glass as a way of equalizing the absorption of heat and re-releasing of the heat. Is there a rule of thumb? Otherwise, I'll just look at it over the internet, but I'm just going to kind of do what I think.
It's been a long time since I researched that stuff, so I don't have a formula off the top of my head, but I would say more is always better on thermal mass. And yeah, make sure, like I was saying before, make sure you can insulate as many walls as you can, because you'd be amazed how little insulation one sheet of glass or one sheet of plastic actually provides, and just how many BTUs it takes to actually keep a greenhouse at a comfortable temperature for plants.
So I had mentioned earlier I got 13 sheets of thermal pane from a high-rise that was replacing all its windows. And these particular ones are thermally broken aluminum frames, which I can probably screw on a hinge onto and flap them open. That said, I was looking at a greenhouse designed website, and they said I really need a bottom ventilation and top ventilation.
Yes.
And they take the doors off in the greenhouse during the summer because it gets so intense. I was thinking maybe I'd put some sort of a tent over it to keep it the really bad sun off it.
Okay, yeah, on venting, any hot air you want to let out, you have to be able to replace with cold air. So whatever vent you're putting up top to let heat out, you have to have a vent about equivalent size on the bottom for intake. There's a website called littlegreenhouse.com, littlegreenhouse.com. And they sell all sorts of greenhouse supplies, and they also have some excellent information as far as sizing for venting and that kind of thing. And then you mentioned something else, and now I lost track of it. So what was the other thing you mentioned?
Well, I left the door. They leave the doors off during the summer months, according to this one website. I'm looking for the gizmo you crank to then convert to opening the top vent. And if I could put these windows on a 45-degree angle with a space between them, perhaps I could have an aluminum cap or something go straight up and down, maybe, because I want to make it weather tight during the winter.
Gotcha. Well, what I use for the venting system on my greenhouse is they're actually doors, and I use linear actuators to open and close them. So maybe that's something for you to consider.
The linear actuator being a slide bar like on a roll-top desk or a flap-down desk, that sort of thing, or a trunk?
I guess it would sort of be like that, but these are electrically powered. It's basically like if you have a hydraulic cylinder, except that it's electrically powered.
Oh, yeah. I have some hydraulic ones, well, actually air ones, that I got off a junk shop up in Rochester. I thought it would be kind of cool in my wood shop to use them to hold something while it was gluing, almost like an air clamp. But I think that's overkill, although I can run compressed air out there, I suppose. So this is electric, so it's probably got a motor and a screw thread.
Yep, exactly. And I like that air clamp idea.
So littlegreenhouse.com, I might be able to find them there, you're thinking. Rochester had some interesting surplus junk stores that they would raid Kodak when they went out of business, or they would close a factory. They had all sorts of factory parts that you'd never see before that I just went nuts in and came across a bunch of these air things. I also got a controller that controls the application of force, so I can stop it at any way. It's almost like a joystick for a compressed air thing. So yeah, it looked like it had a use, but it's been sitting in my shop in a drawer for a while.
It sounds like a cool little unit. I don't know if I'd necessarily use it for a greenhouse vent, but interesting. Yeah, the linear actuators, you can get those on eBay, Amazon, whatever. And you can get them in all, DC, AC, whatever, and with different stroke lengths and that sort of stuff. Yeah, should be able to figure that out. And on my YouTube channel there are some videos on how I built those vents, so if you're looking for some reference, that might help too.
The only hesitation I have is it weatherproof? I'd want them so it didn't rust, maybe out of stainless or something.
Mine are stainless, but they're not outside, they're inside the greenhouse, so you're just dealing with humidity inside the greenhouse.
Yep, roger that. I'll have to look for them. That sounds kind of cool. Actually, then you put it on a Wemo system, and I can use it on my iPad to cool the greenhouse off. Or maybe you could tell me how to hook that up to some sort of a Raspberry Pi or whatever with temperature sensor.
Yeah, I have a whole series on that on my channel on how to do that.
Oh, I can see myself glued to this. Thanks.
You're very welcome. All right, let's just do one last opportunity for check-ins here. See if any last-minute check-ins, and then we'll roll on down the list. This is KD2 and Net Control for the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. For further check-ins, please call now. All right, no further check-ins recognized at this time. We'll roll on down to K2LD. Bob.
Okay, the first thought that was in my head that I got to shake out, then I can rearrange my thoughts, is the way you phrased sweet and manure in the same sentence. That's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know. It reminds me back when I was just a little kid, and my grandparents at the time had relatives who had a farm in Connecticut, and we used to go there for sheep manure. And when we brought it back home, it was still kind of fresh, and they said you had to let it rot a little bit. So they had to put it in this big bucket. It was like a drum. They put it in there, and they filled it up with water. And they made my job go over there every day to stir it. And let me tell you, it was a treat. And when you say sweet and manure, that's what's coming to mind.
Oh yeah, and I could do you better than that. You should get a whiff of a good comfrey tea after it's sat for about a year. Oh, it is the most horrible smelling stuff. Yeah, no, the sweet manure smell I'm talking about is a dairy barn manure smell, and that is vastly different from the smell of sheep manure or pig manure and many of the other manures out there that are pretty foul. The dairy barn smell is well, I don't know if you've been to a dairy barn, but if you haven't, you should go check one out. Get a whiff of that. You'll see it's a totally different smell. And having grown up around so many cows and farmed when I was a kid, that smell always kind of brings me back to being a kid, so it doesn't bother me so much. Now, pig manure or sheep manure or poultry manure, any of those, I want no part. I don't even want to catch a whiff of those, so I'm there with you on that.
And the second thought I got to get out of my head is when you said littlegreenhouse.com, I typed that into the browser as you're talking so I can take a peek at it. And being from Greene County, I spelled green with an E. And I'm looking at it and saying, this don't look anything like what he's talking about. Because here is a website, littlegreen.com. And it's looks like a rental house in Iowa or something stupid like that. So just got a chuckle out of that.
That's funny. And yeah, I could see spelling green the way you do all the time. You could mistype that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, though. I'm looking around. They got a lot of interesting things. Might get tempted. Who knows? All right. Throw it on down the line. K2LD.
All right, very good. Yeah, they're actually an excellent supplier. They're very fast on shipping. They carry all high-quality products, and they have excellent information on their site, so you can figure out what you need before you order. And their service is excellent as well. That's just the one I happen to use, and that's one of the few web addresses that is stuck in my head enough that I actually remember it when people ask me about greenhouse material stuff. So let's roll on down to KD2CVW Don. Alright, I guess Don must have secured, and we'll roll on down to Jim, K2BHM.
Okay, stop laughing. All right. You guys are genuinely well aware of the status of your feces, to be politically correct. Okay, I grew up in the country, and across the road from us was 14 acres of asparagus, and beyond that, the farmer also raised pigs, and he would routinely, particularly when it was a little wet out and it would soak in, fertilize the asparagus with pretty
Intense smelling.
ripe
Yep.
pig manure. So there is nothing to describe that. I rest my case, K2BHM.
I don't think I've ever smelled a manure that smells worse than pig manure, and especially if it's like ripe and real sour. It's overwhelming horrible. Yeah, no interest in that.
You say it's indescribably delicious. Oh, sorry, wrong commercial.
I think it would be indescribably horrendous. Yeah. All right, let's make one last round through the list here. We'll roll back to the top. W2RWS.
No, I assume that's why they call chickens fowl.
Matt?
Okay, maybe not. My father, when I was in high school, said, "You're getting a job, son, and I got one here for you. Just go down to the racetrack and report down to the guys that do general maintenance. You'll make minimum wage." And one of my jobs was to clean out the stalls in the Goshen racetrack. So I know about that smell very, very well. But not pigs. I think I want to stay away from that one.
Well, I'll put it this way. If you cleaned out a stall for a pig farm, you would so gladly go back to the Goshen racetrack for half the pay. It's a world of difference for sure. Horse manure isn't too bad either. The horse and cow manures aren't bad. The pig manure, the sheep manure, and the chicken manure can be pretty horrible. Anyway, let's roll on down to Bob, K2LD.
Yeah, looking at that little greenhouse thing, the one thing I don't see in here is any, like, complete hydroponic setup. That's simply a hobby thing and not normal for a greenhouse.
It's done commercially, but it's usually people buy their hydroponics supplies and gears from a company specializing in that, or sometimes you'll find huge conglomerates. But little greenhouses focus primarily on greenhouse supplies only, from the best of my knowledge. I haven't looked into hydroponics in a long time.
I toyed with the idea every once in a while, just because of my limited space in my greenhouse setup, to figure out what to do. And right now I'm helping somebody build a greenhouse. They're adding it on to the side of their barn.
Awesome.
Not very big, and it's only against the wall, but it's all glass on one side and glass skylights. This is going to make a good source material for some of the things they want to put inside, because they just put the walls up. And they were thinking of doing some sort of hydroponic setup on one of the walls. So I was just looking at that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, well, that's awesome. As far as hydroponics, I'll say a couple of things about it. It does have some advantages in management, but what it has for advantages in management, you lose a lot of things like plants taking their nutrition from microbial metabolites from soil biology, and that's not such a huge big deal, for a small grow operation. But the bigger problem I find is just the power dependence. You're dependent on power all the time to run that, to run pumps and aeration and all that kind of stuff. And you're dependent on those not breaking down. So if you have a pump go, you can watch all your plants die in 24 hours. And so that can be not so fun.
So a gang of multiple pumps, kind of like a parallel setup, just like that. All right, just interesting thoughts. Always appreciate the education. And that's all I got. That's it on now.
Right. You know the deal. Redundance, NASA style. Backup for your backup for your backup for your backup. Anyway, thanks for turning in, Rob. But we'll roll on down to K2BHM. Jim, your final comments for the night?
I don't think you want them, but anyway. Now, I'm sidetracked. I am dealing with a friend who has a plumbing problem, a clogged drain, and we are trying to analyze the smell of the effluent coming out of the drain to try and figure the possible source of it. And you're right up the same alley. Although I don't think anybody. Well, never mind. Don't go there.
Your wife sounds very happy about that thought.
Yeah, we think her daughter might have thrown something down the sink downstairs that didn't agree with things, but we haven't quite pinned it down to that yet as to ascertain the blame.
Gotcha. I think we'll just leave that where it lies. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and roll this up for the evening and call it a night, because I got a few more things I got to get done here. So with that, this has been a session of the Sunday Night All Things Natural Net. The Sunday Night All Things Natural Net is sponsored by the Overlook Amateur Radio Club, located in beautiful Ulster County, New York. You can always find out more about our club by visiting our website at www.omarcclub.org. That's whiskey, Oscar Mike Alpha Romeo Charlie Lima Uniform Bravo Oscar Romeo Golf. Thanks to all those who participated. This is KD2I, and officially closing the Sunday night All Things Natural Net. And a couple announcements. Thursday nights at 8 p.m., K2GLV runs the Thursday night net. It's a more technically oriented net, usually with some sort of topic related to amateur radio or something technical. In the mornings at 8:35 a.m. every day is an informal net run by Paul, AC2UQ. And in the evenings at 6:30 p.m. is a slightly more formal net that's run by rotating shifts of net controls. So that concludes the announcements. This is KD2IN, closing the Sunday night net officially and returning this repeater to regular amateur use. Thanks to all those who participated. KD2IN saying 73. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, DJ. I'm going back to trying to analyze the other smells. Have a good evening, everybody. KGBHM.
Hey, K2BHM, this old plumber's trick, if you use oil of peppermint at the sink, you can then smell it wherever it comes out, and it's a pleasing smell, obviously, but it's a way of tracing pipes.
Yeah, well, she's got a clog, and it's in a situation where...
I guess we don't need to go into plumbing. So that's the end of the net, and I don't know if the stream notification didn't go out or people are just busy tonight, but if you're here and you watch this, thanks for watching it. I hope everyone has a great evening, and we'll see you over at the Paranormal Portal if you're into that. Thanks for watching the Pharmacy Seeds Network.